This video is a review for the Unit 7 Quiz 2. So we're going to look at some coordinate problems, and then we're going to do equations of a median and altitude and a perpendicular bisector. So number one, find the missing coordinates. So we already have B, and because these two have tick marks, that means that those lines are congruent, and B is in fact a midpoint. So if we have a midpoint, we're trying to find the endpoint. We want to double it then to get our C points. So our C point then is going to be negative 4h and negative 8k, because we want to double both of those values. In number 2, when we look at our points, we see that C is a midpoint because it was bisected, and we see that these two sides are congruent. If the two sides are congruent, we're also going to say the third side of the triangle is congruent. So if we know that C is at negative 2m comma n, it moved negative 2 to the left, which means both of these with the two tick marks are negative 2m in length. And we know that it moved down negative n, so our length going vertically is negative n. So those will help us find our points. So to get B to go from A, we went negative 2m to the left, so our negative 2 is our x-coordinate. Our y-coordinate is going to stay at 0 because it's even with A. Then we move from B to C, which has the coordinates, to D, which doesn't. So D is going to keep the same x-coordinate because it's on the same vertical line as B and C. To get the y-coordinate, we went from B down negative n to get to C, and down another negative n again, which makes this negative 2n. And then to get E, from D we moved left negative 2n, so that's going to change the negative 4m for the x-coordinate and leave us at negative 2n for the y-coordinate because E is on the same horizontal line as D. Number 3, triangle ABC has the coordinates A at negative 1, 7, B at 5, 3, and C at 9, negative 3. So we're going to draw our little triangle off to the side of ABC, and I'm going to label the points. So A is negative 1, negative 7, B is 5, 3, and C is 9, negative 3. So in part A it says if BM is an altitude, what is the slope of BM? So from B to M, remember that an altitude makes right angles. So we want to know what the slope of BM is. So remember, to do the slope of a perpendicular line, we need the opposite reciprocal. So first we're going to find the slope of the line that was intersecting, which is AC. So to do that slope, we're going to do the y-coordinate minus the other y-coordinate, and the x-coordinate minus the other x-coordinate. Remember that order doesn't matter as long as you're using the same coordinate for the x and the y. So when I subtract then negative 3 minus negative 7, I get positive 4, and 9 minus negative 1 is 10. That reduces to 2/5. But we want to know the slope of BM, which is the perpendicular slope. Remember, to get perpendicular slope, it's the opposite reciprocal. So because it was positive, it's now negative. Reciprocal, we're going to flip the numerator and the denominator. So now it's negative 5 over 2. In part B, it says that CN is a median. So remember, a median meets at the midpoint. So N is representing our midpoint. So we want to find the coordinates of N. So we're going to use point A and point B to find our midpoint. So when we're doing the midpoints, we're going to add the x's together. So negative 1 plus 5 over 2. And 3 plus negative 7 over 2. So really, all we're really doing is taking the average of those points. So negative 1 plus 5 divided by 2 is 2. And 3 plus negative 7 divided by 2 is negative 2. So our midpoint is going to be the coordinate of N. So in number 4, we are given 3 points of a triangle, D, E, and F. So we're going to label the points on our graph. So D is at negative 5, 4, E is at negative 1, 10, and F is at 7, negative 6. So we want the altitude of EA. So the altitude is going from E to a point A and is making a right angle with that side. So in order to make a right angle, we need perpendicular lines. So when we do the altitude, we use the point from the vertex that was drawn from, so negative 110, and then we need to find our perpendicular slope. So first we're going to find the slope of the line we're drawn to, so df. So remember it's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and that gets a slope of negative 10 over 12, which reduces to negative 5, 6. So the perpendicular slope is the opposite, so because this was negative, it's going to be positive, and then we're going to flip the numerator and the denominator, so our slope is 6 over 5. So we're going to use the slope 6 over 5 and the point negative 110 to write our equation in point slope form. So point slope form is y minus the y coordinate 10 equals our slope 6 over 10 times x minus the x slope. But because the x coordinate is negative, it's going to become a plus 1. Now in number 5, we're going to do the median. So we're again going to draw a triangle. So we have D, E, and F, and we're going to label the points so we don't have to go back and look in the problem for the numbers. So it says that DM is a median. So from D to M is going to be that midpoint of the opposite side and split into two congruent parts. So to find the equation in point slope form, the first thing we want to do is we want to find what the coordinate of M is, which is our midpoint. So to do the midpoint, we're going to use the points of E and F. So we have negative 1 plus 7 over 2, and we have 10 plus negative 6 over 2. So negative 1 plus 7 is 6, divided by 2 is 3, and 10 plus negative 6 is 4, divided by 2 is 2. So our midpoint is 3, 2. Then to get our slope for the median, we want the slope of that median line. So we're going to use the points of D and F to find our slope. So to get our slope, we would have 2 minus 4 over 3 minus negative 5, which gets us negative 2 over 8, so our slope is negative 1/4. So now we're going to use those two pieces of information to make our equation. So we would have y minus 2 equals negative 1/4 x minus 3. In number 6, this is the last problem, which is finding the equation of the perpendicular bisector. So we're still using the same triangle. So we have D, E, and F, and I'm going to label those points again. So if I want the perpendicular bisector GH of the side of DE, remember that GH doesn't have to be a point in the triangle because the perpendicular bisector is just a point that passes through a line that passes through another line. So we have our perpendicular bisector. If you want to label it, you can label it G and H. So it's perpendicular and it bisects those sides into two congruent parts. So we want to do two things, combining what we did for the median and the altitude. So first we want to find the midpoint of our perpendicular bisector. So to find the midpoint, we're going to use the points of D and E. So we have negative 5 plus negative 1 over 2 and 4 plus 10 over 2. And that reduces to negative 3 comma 7 because we have negative 6 over 2 gets us negative 3 and 4 plus 10 is 14 divided by 2 gets us 7. Then to find the slope of the perpendicular bisector, first we need to find the slope of DE. So we have 4 minus 10 over negative 5 minus negative 1, which gets us negative 6 over negative 4. Now, because they are both negative numbers, that makes them positive, and then we can reduce that further to 3 over 2. Now, we're not done yet because we need the perpendicular slope, so we want the opposite reciprocal. So if it was 3 over 2, it's now negative 2/3. So we're going to use the midpoint and the perpendicular slope to write our equation. So we would have y minus 7 equals negative 2/3 times x plus 3.